Hey, this is Austin Weber with Weber Bracketology, where every day is Selection Sunday, and it's been a little over 2 weeks of transfer portal action. And even though after the first week, the second week kind of got off to a slow start, this Monday it really kicked off, and there's been quite a few actually high profile players who've gone into the transfer portal. There have been a few teams that have lost a number of players, teams like Iona and St. John's that are going through coaching changes. So it's pretty natural that happens to other teams as well, like Georgetown, Province, teams like that are losing players. But then there's teams like North Carolina and Kansas that have had a number of players leave. In North Carolina's case, it's been mostly players that didn't play much last year, really at all. They really just had one big time player leave. And then there was Kansas, who had some quality depth players actually leave, players that likely would have gotten a good amount of playing time next year, even with a good freshman class coming in. So some of the top players that are still available in the transfer portal that have entered in the last week, one of them is Namari Burnett from Alabama. This is the second time he's transferring. He transferred from Texas Tech first. He averaged about 5 points a game last year and made 9 starts, so he could be a really valuable player at other teams, though at Alabama, given the quality of talent they had and probably will have next year, he may not get as much playing time there as he would probably somewhere else. From Auburn, Johan Traor and Chance Westry are two freshmen that were highly regarded recruits. Johan Traor being a 5-star, Chance Westry a high 4-star. And they only got about 9 minutes per game last year, each of them. So they're likely transferring to get more playing time, but they're clearly very talented. And wherever they go, they're going to be big assets to the teams that get them. The exodus at Georgetown continued, this time with Brandon Murray, who's transferring also for a second time. He transferred from LSU before. He was a pretty important scorer for Georgetown last year, their second leading scorer with over 13 points a game. But like a lot of players from that school, with Ed Cooley coming in and Patrick Ewing gone, they're going to see quite a bit of upheaval in their roster. And Brandon Murray, he'll be a good player wherever he goes. But yeah, that's kind of a big hit for Georgetown, losing their top now 2 scorers. A really interesting player is Kario Oquendo from Georgia. He scored almost 13 points a game last year, only playing 25 minutes. On Georgia, they kind of split their minutes pretty evenly through about like 7 or 8 players. There's a lot of players around that 20 minutes per game. And I think with more playing time, Oquendo could see his numbers pop up a lot. He's a really good scorer. So I think he's going to be getting high major interest. I'm sure he's been getting offers from a lot of high major teams so far. But I think he could be a player who really has a big season in a new home next year. Another player who I think is going to have a big year next year, and I thought it'd be at the school he was at, is Jaden Epps from Illinois. As a freshman, he scored 9.5 points a game, and he was really productive, especially as the year went on near the end. I mean, he can shoot, he can get to the hoop. He's a really good freshman, and I just assumed he was going to have a big big sophomore year for Illinois last year, kind of like how Ayo Dosunmu did something very similar there, but wherever he goes, hopefully he's still able to have the same kind of breakout going to a new place. I just thought Illinois, the continuity might be good for him, but he's going to be able to be probably a star wherever he goes next year. A really interesting veteran that's entered the transfer portal, Severe Wheeler from Kentucky. He's a veteran point guard who barely played last year, but he's kind of a plug and play. You can play anywhere. I mean, he's coming off an injury that he suffered. I don't remember exactly what his injury was, but he was injured most season. I think he only played 6 games, but he can really play wherever. He's a fantastic point guard. He can score a little bit. He's a small guy, though. But yeah, he's a really good point guard. Probably he might be the best point guard going into the portal this year. A really good scoring guard from Maryland is Hakeem Hart. He's a big guard, and he was a really big part of Maryland's success last year. They didn't have a ton of guys that really scored. It was really their starting 5 that was a majority of their offense. Hakeem Hart was one of them, averaged about 11 points a game. He shoots the ball pretty well, and I think wherever he goes, he's going to be a good scoring presence. He's not going to be number 1 if he goes to a high major school, but he's a good number 2, 3 guy who can be in your starting lineup or come off the bench, really depending where he goes. But he's a really plug-and-play player who can play anywhere. An exciting player coming off a great freshman season as well, Darion Williams from Nevada. He scored a little over 7 points a game, also had over 7 rebounds, but this was a really talented and deep Nevada team. So being able to get the playing time he had and just the statistics that he put up were really good. He shoots the ball well, and I think he's the player like Jaden Epps, who for his sophomore year is going to have a big breakout wherever he goes. The highest profile name in the portal by far is Caleb Love from North Carolina. Obviously a big part of their run to the national championship game, but this year just inconsistency, and he was a big part of that inconsistency. He's obviously a very talented player, he's a 5-star recruit and all that, but it's going to be interesting to see where he goes and how well he fits in with a different team, because kind of at North Carolina, they were used to how he played. They knew how he played. But for him to come in somewhere else, I'm really interested to see where he goes and what kind of impact he can have at a new school. A big-time scorer from a smaller school, Dalton Neck from Northern Colorado, scored over 20 points a game last year. He is a big guard, and I think he's going to go to a high major school, and he's going to provide good shooting, good scoring. He's going to be like that number 2-3 option, probably not even number 2, maybe a 3-4 option, who can just get you buckets. That's really what he's going to do wherever he goes. He's going to get them buckets. He's going to shoot threes, and it's going to be interesting to see how he does at a big-time program as opposed to somewhere like Northern Colorado. Kel'el Ware was another big-time recruit entering the portal. He was a top 10 player as a freshman. He had a decent season. He might be the most talented player in the portal at this point. He had a decent freshman year. He's a good shot blocker for a guy who's 7 feet tall. He has a good jump shot. He can shoot threes. He doesn't shoot them at the best percentage, but he has the ability. He can space the floor, and he can rim protect. He's really what a modern basketball team wants in their bigs. So he might be the crown jewel of this transfer portal class when it's all said and done. Another big, though, that can really help is Caden Shedrick from Virginia. He's a good shot blocker as well. He can get you some points down low. He can be the guy that catches lobs. And obviously he's from Virginia. Doesn't make you automatically a great defender, but he's a great defender. And so a team just looking for a big who doesn't need them to be a scorer, maybe just a defender and a guy who catches lobs, kind of a modern big. I think Caden Shedrick can really play wherever he wants. And it's kind of surprising that he transferred from Virginia. 2 players I really like from Western Kentucky are Davion McKnight and Jamarion Sharp. Davion McKnight, I was really interested in him actually during his freshman season. Western Kentucky was a little bit better then, but he's a big-time scorer. Last 2 seasons, he's averaged over 16 points a game. Can score at any level, and I think he can come in and be a really good scoring threat at a high major school. And then Jamarion Sharp at 7'5", I believe the tallest player in college basketball. He's just a shot blocker. Blocked over 4 a game the last 2 seasons, and for his career, this dude, you just plug him in, he can defend. I don't know how good he'll be on a team maybe that needs to space the floor a little bit because he's not a shooter. But on defense, you really can't get much better for a rim protector than someone who's 7'5", averaging 4 blocks per game. And the last really big name that entered the portal this last week and is still available is Graham Ike from Wyoming. He missed all of last season with an injury, and that really sucked for Wyoming because after a tournament appearance the year before, they really struggled this last season. But he's a dominant inside scorer, a dominant rebounder, and I think he can be a dominant player at a high major program, and he's going to go. He can go wherever he wants, whoever wants him, and wherever he wants to go, that's where he's going to play. I'm really excited to see him come back and play because he was the major reason I had Wyoming as a top 25 team going into the season last year. There's a few more big name players that entered into the portal just within the last hour or so before I started recording this, so I didn't really have time to do much for them. But then there's Jalen Cook from Tulane, a big-time scorer. Marcus Damask from Southern Illinois. He's another really good player. And then Sadrake Naganga from Boise State. He was a big-time recruit that chose Boise State didn't get a lot of playing time. I was interested, actually, I was just looking into Boise State, what they had coming in for next year, and I was really hoping he'd stay because I thought Boise State would have a really good roster. But it looks like he's not going to be there for next year. But Boise State, I think, will still have a good roster, but that kind of hurts them. Other players are Bryce Williams and Ali Khalifa from Charlotte, Josh Uduji from Coastal Carolina, Mustafa Amzil from Dayton, Tamar Bates from Indiana, Ishmael Massoud from Kansas State, Jack Clark from NC State, Ryan Langborg from Princeton. He was a really big part of their Sweet 16 run. Jason Spurgeon from Southern Utah, MJ Rice from Kansas, Joseph Girard from Syracuse, Keshawn Gilbert from UNLV, Keon Menefield from Washington, and Kai Kaitani from Xavier. Those are just some more names now. There was a big week. It was really hard to fit in all these players, talking about the players that are still available. There's still players that have committed, and that's what we're going to get into next. There was a good number of players that went to the bigger programs, and then there was some good mid-major programs that stayed at that level. But a player moving up to a high major program is Jaquan Walton from Wichita State. He's going to Alabama. He's a really big guard that scored nearly 14 points a game, and he shoots 40% from three. He really is going to fit into that Alabama threes and driving, and just with his length on the perimeter, the way they play defense, I think he's actually a really good fit there, and I think that'll be a really good addition for them. Dame Adelican from Dartmouth, he's a really good shot blocker. He's going to Loyola Chicago, and after the bad season that they had, he's a really good piece that they can add to their roster that will help them hopefully get back to where they were the last few years in the Missouri Valley Conference. Justin Wright from NC Central, he averaged over 16 points a game last year and shot 40% from deep. He's going to Loyola Marymount, who will be looking to kind of be that number 3 team in the West Coast Conference with BYU leaving. They were pretty good this year, and they did have that win over Gonzaga. So I think he'll be really good for them to compete with the likes of St. Mary's and Gonzaga. Maybe not for a conference title, but maybe get into that BYU range where they have a shot at making the NCAA tournament every season. Will Wade got another good player at McNeese State with DJ Richards from UTSA as a freshman. He scored over 10 points a game, and he had quite a few games that he scored over 15 points, got 20 as his season high. So at a mid-major level, I think he's going to be a really good help for the team that Will Wade is building over there at McNeese State. John Tanji from Colorado State, he's going to Missouri, and I think that's a great spot for him. Missouri's got that fast three-point shooting style, and John Tanji, with the bigger role that he had this year after Colorado State was losing some of their top talent to the draft and such, John Tanji really stepped up, and he was a big-time scorer. He can shoot the ball. He can play fast. I think he's going to fit right in with what they're doing in Missouri offensively. North Carolina desperately needed some help in the portal, and Paxson Wojcik from Brown, he's just a shooter. He's a scorer. He's obviously not going to be able to score at the same level at North Carolina he was in the Ivy League, but he's going to be a reliable catch-and-shoot guy on the wing. He can take it to the hole as well, and they really need consistent, reliable scoring on that roster. And with Caleb Love gone, they're losing a good amount of scoring. Kim English is bringing Josh Aduro from George Mason to Providence, which is great because he needs a reliable player that he knows, and Josh Aduro can do that. He can score in the post, he can take it to the hoop, and he's a decent rim protector, but he really just gives his coach someone familiar who can come in and be really the star, probably the star of the team right away. That's what he was for George Mason. I think he can do that for Providence. We'll see how he does in the Big East. Virginia Tech got a good piece with Mekhi Long from Old Dominion. He's a big scoring guard, and Virginia Tech's losing a little bit to graduation, so he'll come in there and he'll be able to provide Virginia Tech good scoring, good size. He can provide good defense and play fast like they like to play. Indiana is getting I don't know if you can say a replacement for Trace Jackson Davis, but they're getting someone that might be able to fill his spot, and Peyton Sparks. He's a really good inside scorer. He's obviously not going to be able to be the all-American candidate that Trace Jackson Davis was for them, but getting that guy from in-state, from Ball State, I think that Peyton Sparks will be reliable for Indiana, and maybe he could blossom into really a really good player there. Boise State may be losing a star player, but they are getting a good player from San Diego, Roddy Anderson. He's a scorer, he's a shooter, so I think while they're losing some talent, I think he's going to come in and he can be a really good player. I really like what Boise State's building. They got a lot of good players on the wing that can shoot and that can score. The last bit of news, it's not really a transfer commitment because it's Jamin Breakfield from Ole Miss. He's staying at Ole Miss to play for Chris Beard, which is really good because Ole Miss didn't have a lot of talent to begin with, and I know Chris Beard is great at using the portal, so it'll be interesting to see how he fills that in. But keeping a player like Jamin Breakfield, who was a highly recruited freshman and was like their best play, he was their best player this last season. It's really good for a new coach to be able to keep a star player for a team, especially after he had already entered the portal and was looking to leave. So yeah, it was a really big week in the transfer portal. A lot of big names, and it's just going to keep on coming for the next 6 weeks. It's a while before the transfer portal ends, though. There's over 1,000 players that have already entered. But as teams are finishing their postseason tournaments, that's when a majority of the last few bits of players are going to be going, and then as coaching changes continue to happen, players are going to be leaving, players are going to be going where they want to go. It's going to be a crazy next 6 weeks. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe and comment down below any players you're excited for your team to go after in the transfer portal. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the Final Four, the national championship coming up this weekend, and all this craziness happening in the transfer portal.